Yeah, racing drivers often have other interests and talents, and for Jacques Villeneuve, he certainly has the talent and the interest in music.
Mais je suis l'être là devant toi. Je ne suis pas ton porteur de croix. Je ne suis pas l'encre de ta foi.
Now there's a little sampling of some of the music from Jacques Villeneuve's forthcoming CD, JV, and it is probably going to be a very hot seller, certainly in Quebec and in France and in other places, and I would suspect around the States as well. And there is a look at Jacques Villeneuve in the office, and we now have the 009. We're going to jump to that, as that is our GT1 class leader in the pit lane. And it looks, Dorsey, like it's just a straight-up stop, no driver change.
Nope, sure isn't. Darren Turner in there. Fuel only. Crank it up. See you later. Have fun. Bye-bye.
It has to be a heart-in-the-throat moment when you're getting the last 3.5 hours or so of the race. Every stop, and you have to shut that engine off, and there's a Corvette about a lap behind you at most, waiting for that thing to start.
Well, you never know, do you? I mean, they're very hard to start. And we've seen it so many times. You come in, shut the thing off for just that short period of time, and then nothing happens, nobody at home when you push the button. So, yeah, definitely everybody's on edge right now because there's nobody out of harm's way, if you will, in this situation. All these guys are within a lap or two of one another, and one little problem, and those 2 laps go away so fast you can't believe it.
Here's a look at Stéphane Sarrazin in the number 8 Total Peugeot, the gentleman who put that car on pole. And Sarrazin sitting 3rd in class right now, a couple of laps behind Villeneuve in the team number 7. And speaking of Villeneuve and music and race drivers and music, there's another guy here this weekend who's a race driver who's got some music. He hasn't necessarily recorded a CD that I'm aware of, but I know he's performed with 38 Special and some other bands. Dorsey Schrader.
I've been known to carry a tune in my back pocket every once in a while.
Play a little keyboards too, huh?
Haven't done that in a long time. But the old fingers, you know, got arthritis now and stuff. I'm getting old. Singing's easier than playing piano.
Well, that's a fact. Here's Romain Dumas in the Pescarolo that continues to be the really the only challenger of sorts to anything diesel right now in that Pescarolo Judd. But it weighs about 3 laps back of Sarrazin.
That didn't look like it was on song to me either, Greg. That car did not look like it was humping down the road, if you know what I mean. We see driver change here. Johnny Herbert getting in, I believe.
Yeah, Enge out.
And look at all of the battle scars on these cars when they come the next morning. There's the Adrian Fernandez car as it's pulled its pit stall as well.
That car continues to run second in class. Weighs back, though.
This car on pit lane as well. So a lot of activity for young Justin Bell down there. I don't.
Yeah, absolutely. They took the rear deck lid off, and I don't think it was like most Aston drivers to get the golf clubs out. They're in there deep, and they actually even brought the wheels out a second ago. Difficult to see what he's doing down there, but it's right down. Camera guy's with me. Right down, right down. That's tough. That's tough to see. But I guess it's probably something to do with the, I mean, he's right underneath the fuel tank there, Dorsey. What do you think? It's difficult to see, but let's just say this was not on the plan. They knew something was wrong, probably from the telemetry, because they immediately went to the rear panel. But and meanwhile, obviously the standard driver change and the tire and the refueling.
Oh, it's the alternator. There's an alternator down there. An alternator belt is missing. You see it off to the right. There is the alternator. It's being driven off of the rear end, off the back of the rear end. And unfortunately, there's no belt hooked up, so they are now trying to find a belt to put on the alternator so the car can charge its battery.
Okay, you see, you see more than I do. If I was attached to front of that camera, what teamwork. Anyway, our guy is not shy.
Okay, that's a 007 car. We weren't sure about that, so that's the fourth place car experiencing alternator belt problems.
Yeah, it's obviously, this is just, they saw it on the telemetry. They've got a new belt coming out and a new wheel.
A new pulley too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So obviously the pulley has fallen off one or the other, either off the alternator or the back of the...
And one's underneath the car too, I better tell him that.
or the rear end.
Guys, is the wheel's gone under the car? Yeah, I know. Right. Yeah, just because I could see it from the back, and that won't help the ride.
Well, you know,
it's
interesting. They take all of these auxiliary things like the air conditioning compressors and the alternators and power steering, anything that can get off of the engine and put onto the drive shaft or the rear end, takes and gives the engine more horsepower. It takes horsepower to drive those different pumps and so forth. If you can stick it out there on the chassis somewhere, you don't lose the horsepower to the engine. So that's why they mount them like that. But when they go bad, as you can see from this poor boy, it's not too easy to get at.
Also, Dorsey, you know, normally or traditionally, you'd see an awful lot more problems with trying to change a pulley like that. But it's actually great for access, isn't it?
That is, but I think he's in dire jeopardy of maybe splitting his britches here in this position.
Yeah, I tell you what, I've got the most brilliant camera guy here with speed. If he could sit in the passenger seat half the time, I think he would. Underneath
that car, if you were looking at that, is a diffuser there. It's a flat bottom. That's a good shot of the flat bottom. Off to the side, you see two little vertical, there it is, plates. That's the diffuser, and it channels the air out from underneath the car, creating a little Venturi effect and sucking the car to the ground, if you will.
And Dorsey, what's interesting with this compared to, you know, a lot of the prototypes, it's very lightweight. Don't you think it looks very slim and almost paper-like, which obviously says a lot for the fluidity of the aerodynamics underneath this Aston?
And the other side of the pit, Justin, the overall leader is in. Marco Werner getting out of the car. We see driver change happening already. And it looks like they will be taking tires this time. There's the vertical lights on the side. The one light lit up, meaning that is the lead car in its class. The red light designating LMP1. If it were a LMP2, it'd be a blue light. GT1's a green light. GT2 is a yellow light. This is world feed. They will be very, very careful this time to make sure. See, watch that. Make sure that tire's centered on its little stud before you run that gun down on it. They're under close scrutiny right now after the problem they had earlier on, which called poor Dindo a big accident when the wheel came off.
Now, there's some fairly remarkable developments should that car hang on for the win. Biela Piro-Werner going for back-to-back wins. Now, it'll be the first triple driver tandem Narduro to win back-to-back. Phil Hill and Olivier Jean-Duvienne in a Ferrari did it in 61 and 62. Werner going for a third straight, and Biela and Piro going for their fifth wins to tie Derek Bell. So pretty important what's going on right there.
I'm not picking on Tomas Enge or anything like that, but, you know, we're looking at that belt being off. He was off in that gravel trap. Could be all the same problem.
Well, that can certainly happen. As you can see, coming up on 3.5 hours remaining, taking a look at a full overall rundown at this point, and you can see the 009 Aston Martin is 6th overall, leading in class. And by the way, we also had the GT2 leading Porsche of Pat Long has come in and turned back over to Richard Leitz. We'll be back with more from Le Mans. Just a little over 3 hours and 30 minutes remaining in this 75th running of the Michelin 24 Hours of Le Mans. Welcome back, everybody. Going out onto this legendary track and watching some of the cars. This case, the 009 Aston Martin. Darren Turner, your GT1 leader by a lap over the number 63 Corvette at this stage. Turner just continuing to hustle that car around. But Dorsey, we're getting into the area now, give or take an hour or so, where historically these Aston Martins have had some problems, and the vets have been able to suddenly pop through. We're going to have to keep an eye on that. Here is Jean-Philippe Bellac has brought the number 54, Matmut Orakis-Saline, into the pits for what looks to be a fairly routine stop. And by the way, the number 16, Pescarolo, we saw just a shot of that before he went to break of that car, Romain Dumas bringing it into the pits. It was a long stop. They did some work on the left front corner of that car, but it had, at that point, some 13 laps in hand over the 18 Courage car, the other Pescarolo Judd run by Roll Center. They have lost a couple of those laps, but still have plenty in hand. And, is that the vet in? That's the Luc Alphand Corvette number 72. That is the car, actually, that won here last year.
Yeah, Luc Alphand's car is in, and they're doing a routine service to it. Of course, it is one of the Team Corvette old cars, one of the old cars that have been sold. All of these cars, I should say, every Corvette in this race has won the 24 Hour of Le Mans, except for the 2 that were Team Corvette's new cars. So the 63 is the only car that hasn't won it.
And the 72 is away. Jérôme Poliquin remains behind the wheel of the Luc Alphand Aventure machine. And speaking of aventures and adventures, it looks like Chris Neville's set up for one down in the pits. Bud, what's happening?
Well, guys, now I know what it's like up in the booth. I'm sure this is how you get the whole race while Justin and Brian and Andrew are running around down on pit lane the entire time. I'm here in the Risi garage. Melissa, the masseuse, she's giving me a little massage. This is how I'm going to spend the next, what do we have, about 3 hours or so. Got a little portable TV here so I can see everything going on the racetrack. I can also check all the stats. So I think pretty much from here on out, I'm going to be able to call any action on pit lane from right back here. Hopefully trying to loosen up some of the knots I've gotten over the past 20-some hours.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah, Doris, what do you need?
To be more authentic, if you want to be like up in the booth, you need to move that whole operation a little closer to the toilet.
So are you saying you don't have a pretty masseuse up there? Is Diffey giving you the massage?
No, we don't have masseuse, but we have an aroma that you don't have.
Well, we've got that tire aroma down
there
here,
you go.
and some oil and radiator fluid, stuff like that. So it's very racy down here, though.
Well, when she's done, send her this way.
So basically, yeah, there's a bunch of stuff sitting in front of you down there, Chris. What is that where you've thrown the remains of the shrimp and the caviar?
Haven't seen any shrimp and caviar down here. I was offered a candy bar, though.
Oh, well, good. That'll be nice. Basically, I think what we're hearing is Chris is going to be relaxed, jovial, and pretty much useless for the rest of the show.
Well, at least we got the candy bar part down.
Well, that we've got in spades up here for sure. Now, Chris, have fun. There's the number 63 Corvette. Johnny O'Connell behind the wheel, another stint, and doing everything they can at this stage to just try and stay in the hunt. The interesting thing is, Dorsey, when we look at the times being turned by the 009 Aston Martin and the 63 Corvette, almost identical on those last laps. It seems every time Vette finds something, the Aston Martin has a response.
Well, Aston has been the faster of the 2 cars the whole weekend here. There's no question. In an outright race, if it wasn't endurance, I think that the Aston's got the measure, but Corvette's going to keep the pressure on as we see one of the Peugeots at 8. Serzin now brings that car in for what should be routine service.
There's the drinks bottle.
And again, this is world feed, so we're not switching cameras and breaking away from the Corvette guys just to go to the Peugeot because we know who it is.
Absolutely. Some fresh, I would assume, cool water for Stefan.
There's that big inlet looking at the back that feeds the turbocharger. Clean air, and it's just not a matter of clean air. It's got to have a certain amount of velocity to it, because the turbocharger, when it spools up, it sucks more air than can be fed just hanging out there on its own. It needs to be ram fed.
So without that kind of velocity, even before it hits the turbo, it almost will starve of air?
It will. You can actually starve a turbocharger completely. Well, there's an air box down there around the turbocharger which holds an air cleaner assembly of some sort, and you can actually suck all of the air out of the box faster than it can be replenished if you don't have enough airflow going in there. That's stuff I learned way back working with the old Lola Porsche.
Let's take a look. Well, there's Casper Elgaard in the 008 Aston Martin. That is, I believe, the Larbra team entry. And he's having a good run. And, okay, we're getting a replay here.
This is some ride height problems going on here. Look at all of the rubber it's shaking out of there as it's bouncing along. Wow. That's all spent rubber. That almost looked like a low tire situation.
That was Bruno Besson in the Courage AER entry. Let's take a look at our Valvoline race recap right now. Class leaders, number 1 overall and in P1 is number 1, Frank Biela in the Audi R10 TDI diesel. In P2, it remains the 31 Lola Zytek from Binney Motorsports with Bill Binney behind the wheel. In GT1, the 009 Aston Martin factory effort of Darren Turner. And in GT2, the IMSA Performance Matmut Porsche of currently Richard Leitz behind the wheel. Now here, take a look at the laps completed in the respective classes. In P1, Audi has cranked off over 325 plus, the Peugeot 319, and the number 8 Peugeot 317, and then Pescarolo is 314 at this stage. So that's where they sit at this stage.
This is going the wrong direction.
Yes.
14 being rolled
Did he just
backwards.
massively overshoot
Well,
his pit?
I don't know. We didn't catch the front end of that. But they had to push him back to here where they're going to work on the car.
It's the racing for Holland.
Well, now he's going to go in the garage, which does not surprise. Oh, and we see a little leakage here.
Jeroen Bleekemolen behind the wheel of that machine, and in it goes for some work where more mechanics can get after it. We are now past 3.5 hours remaining, closing in on the finale of this great event. You interested in turning your plain Jane cell phone into a souped-up hot rod? Well, satisfy your need for speed with high-octane ringtones and fuel-injected wallpapers from Speed Mobile. Log on to speedtv.com now and download your favorite ringtone and wallpaper today. And that right there is what everybody's chasing here in terms of the overall win. And will it be Audi once again? Well, we're going to find out in just a little over 3 hours. Let's check in with Chris Neville, who apparently got booted out of the masseuse chair.
I had to get up and actually come back out to pit lane, and Johnny Herbert here in the 007. The team doing some repairs to the rear deck lid. They pulled one, the lid that was on the car off. It was quite smashed up, and they're having to try and fit a new lid on there. But some of the contact points where it fits in just aren't matching up at this point in time because of some damage back there. I went and found George Howard Chappell, asked him, you know, what happened to the 007? Is this from when Thomas spun earlier? And he said, no, it's not. I said, well, so what happened? And he goes, well, we really don't know. So I said, is this kind of like when your wife borrows the car and comes back with a big scratch and she doesn't know how it happened? He goes, yeah, kind of like that.
Well, they're working on it, feverishly working on it, and while they're doing that, we have Tomas Enge in the garage on the headset. Welcome, Tomas, and Dorsey has a question for you right off the top.
Thomas, you don't know this, but you and I share the identical spot to have the biggest crashes both of us ever had. I had a huge crash there. How is the elbow after the 24-hour?
Well, it's pretty sore, I have to say. I'm pretty worn out, you know. After the accident in St. Petersburg 2.5 months ago, I haven't done so much physical preparation. So the elbow is sore, ribs are still sore as well, the back is sore, and I haven't slept yet, and I'm really ready to go to bed.
I hear that. My shoulder still hurts, and mine's been about 10, 12 years ago anyway. I got into television right behind that because Greg Creamer happened to be calling that race when I went into the same spot you did. How's the car?
Car was better. It was better before, you know, until let's say morning. Then we got a bit problem with front splitter. When Johnny was in the car, we needed to change it. It cost us probably 3 laps or so. And at that point, we went down to 4th position from P1. And there was nothing to lose for us actually. So we were just trying to catch up the front runners. And it went all fine until I catch my teammate Christophe Bouchou. He's been told over the radio that I'm, let's say, 2-3 seconds faster per lap. Just pull over because yeah, and that happens. He didn't want to pull over. We were just racing too hard, too much, and I was just too close to him. Lost a little bit of rear downforce and. Just did a 360. Unfortunately, I lost a little bit of rear downforce from that. The diffuser was damaged, and I got a puncture as well. So for us, the race looks like to be over. We lost several laps in the pits now, repairing other problems, which I don't think were caused by that spin, but it's unfortunate. And you know, you got overall leader with the Audis. They were leading most of the race, and they are not leading anymore. They are not in the race anymore. GT2 class leaders as well. I don't know how about LMP2s. So GT1s happens as well, and we were leading. We are not anymore, and we just have to hope that at least the 009 car can win for us.
Tomas, before you got out of the car, what were your impressions this late in the going of the track right now?
Well, the track is getting better and better all the time. You know, yesterday at the beginning of the race there was quite a few rain showers, and the whole track was pretty slick. during the afternoon or late afternoon, during the night, the grips get better and better, and today it's again better. So it's like more laps you're doing, more rubber down you get, and it looks like the lap times are pretty fast compared to last year. Last year's lap times, it's also cooler than last year as well, so that makes this different. The track generally is improved since last year. They have made Tête Rouge, which is like probably 6th corner, on Mulsanne straight faster, and there is a more grip. The tarmac is better as well. They have made some small other changes around the track, and generally every driver likes faster tracks. So this one is now faster than last year, and everybody likes.
All right, well, we know you like fast tracks and you like to throw down those laps. You threw down a good one earlier. Again, sorry for the problems with the car and the effort, but always great and nice to have you back running again. Obviously, congratulations on the win in the Ferrari at Utah. Great effort here. And we'll let you go get some ice on that elbow, and I bet you those ribs are a little sore as well. So thanks for stopping by, Tomas.
Thank you, guys. I see you in Lime Rock.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Rest up. There aren't many quicker, that's for sure. Had their record coming into this event of 5 straight poles in GT1, which is an outright record for consecutive poles in any class, I think, here at Le Mans. You know, the fact that he wasn't on pole, when it gets to the point where you're not on pole and that's a surprise, that tells you something.
I tell you what, it's a medical miracle that they can do what they can do now. Orthopedic surgery coming so far that he can be here at all driving after breaking his elbow so severely in his ribs, and you know that's a huge hit. Like I said, I had my worst wreck at the very same spot. I consider that corner one of the probably most dangerous anywhere. Now we should change it, but they haven't yet, and it continues to gather you up.
St. Pete, you're talking?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was a tough one. I remember announcing that race that you had your hit in, and I'm with you on the miracles of orthopedic surgery. That's absolutely.
That's right. You're a double hip replacement now, so you know all about it.
Exactly.
You know, 10 years ago, wouldn't have been that easy, but
absolutely, or that long lived, and that was the other end of things. As we now are watching what has really become a very game effort here for this number 99 Krone Racing Risi Competizione Ferrari, and now the hands of 18-year-old Colin Brown. His first visit to Le Mans as a driver. He came here last year and just sort of soaked the atmosphere up with Tracy Krone. But Colin doing a great job, and that car again well poised for a podium at this point. They have to keep the pace alive, though, because that number 93 Autolando Porsche continues to just sort of sit back there just a lap and a half, 2 laps back, and any kind of a hiccup here by the Krone Ferrari, they're going to be in some trouble.
Well, Nick Janssen, you heard him say they had a 4th or 5th place car at best on speed. They're running in 2nd place, which means they've done their job. They're doing their job.
Survival, often more important than pace here at Le Mans. We're seeing that play out once again. In every class, there were cars that were perhaps faster that have fallen by the wayside, and the result are these 3 leaders in each of the classes. So much about Le Mans, of course, is French, but it is also truly an international event. Flags flying atop the tribunes, and in this shot, the center flag is that of the United States, and the pride of the United States when it comes to international racing is Corvette. And the gentleman who really was the creator of the Corvette concept, particularly in terms of racing, had he had his way, this would have been the 50th anniversary of Corvette's racing at Le Mans. Leigh Diffey fills in the rest of the story.
50 years ago, 1957, the experimental Corvette SS was built to take on Jaguar and Mercedes at Le Mans. Conceived by Zora Arkus Duntov, the father of Corvette, the magnesium-bodied car debuted at Sebring, with John Fitch behind the wheel. It was very fast, but lasted only 23 laps. The Corvette SS project had to be shelved shortly thereafter due to a ban on factory involvement in motorsports. 3 years later, Briggs Cunningham fulfilled the dream of Arkus Duntov, bringing 3 Corvettes to Le Mans, which occupied the first 3 spots on the grid. By the end of that 1960 race, however, only 1 Vette was still running. It was driven by Fitch and Bob Grossman and had an overheating problem. But regulations prohibited refilling the radiator, so instead, crew members packed the engine with ice from the team's catering tent. Driving at reduced speed, the ice-cooled Chevy small block powered the team to an 8th place finish overall and first in the GT class. In the hands of Dick Goldstrand, Chevy's second-generation vet debuted at Le Mans in 1967 and set a new Mulsanne speed record of nearly 172 miles per hour, but would not finish. In 1972 and 3, Corvette icon John Greenwood raced at Le Mans on BF Goodrich radial street tyres. In 76, he came back with the outrageous Batmobile, which used racing slicks and was reportedly capable of a top speed of 240 miles per hour. Unfortunately, during his 3 years at Le Mans, none of his vets were able to go the distance. But that all changed in 1995 when Reeves Callaway brought 2 of his modified C4 Corvettes here. They finished 2nd and 3rd in class, their success foreshadowing the arrival of the C5Rs in the year 2000. It took a little longer than he would have liked, but for 47 years, Corvettes have been coming to Le Mans. The legacy of Zora Arkus Duntov lives on today.
Well, I tell you, I remember watching Greenwood and Dickie Smothers of the Smothers brothers racing those Corvettes around, and also a guy named Boris Said did pretty well in those Callaway cars, didn't he, Doris?
And if you have a Callaway driver in your bag, that's what's happened to those Corvettes. They've been melted down and made into Callaway clubs. Same exact guy.
Corvette Challenge. I mean, the legacy of Corvette and Zora Arkus Duntov has just been absolutely fabulous for sure. Now, watching the Peugeot, skies seem to be darkening just a little bit here, and we've been anticipating the arrival of some rain, and that is the number 7 entry in the hands of Jacques Villeneuve. And I understand, Chris, that it's getting really tough on you down there. You had to peel the sunglasses off.
Yeah, Greg, it was about time to take the sunglasses off. You know, we've got enough cloud cover now that the pupils are not being hurt so badly since we haven't slept since, I don't know what, 7 a.m. or so.
Yeah, Tuesday.
On Saturday, and I think it's Sunday now. But, you know, I think we're all working pretty good down here. But I am hoping that the rain stays away for at least another hour because I've got to be out here, and I hate the rain. Standing here, Risi Competizione, the Krone Racing Ferrari. It looks like they're going to be getting ready to do another pit stop here pretty soon. Colin Brown still in 2nd place in GT2. You know, guys, just thinking about what Colin has done, you know, I think we constantly forget the kid's only 18 years old, and we're talking about this being his first Le Mans. Well, he's also run 3 times at the Rolex 24 already. You know, he started out when he was 16 years old, racing with TRG in the Porsche, and then the past 2 years with the Krone Racing prototype. So, I mean, this kid's got so much experience. He's only 18 years old, and what, Tom Christensen won this race for the first time when he was 29? Imagine if he wasn't going to NASCAR.
Yeah, Chris, it was a lot easier being a driver. You know, when you're done with your stint, you go back and go to sleep. But you and I got done with our stint. We had to put up with Diffey. That was not good this morning.
Get a little testy here in the broadcast team, but that's okay. It's a lot of competitive people here, no question. You know, one of the things we were talking about Colin Braun is, you know, his experience at such a young age, his pace. He's had a couple of outright poles in the Rolex series this year. I mean, this kid, it's not like that, you know, he's just out here playing around and having fun. He is flat. He is quick.
Real deal, buddy. Let me tell you something about Colin Braun. He's won races younger than anyone else. He has got the maturity way above his age level. He has been able to win in any venture he's been in. He's got a very smart mother and father who keep him, you know, focused and headed in the right direction. Signing with Roush Fenway, you know, with the experience now of going to ARCA, then on to trucks and into Busch and whatnot. He is a superstar. It won't take long before you see him atop that sheet, too.
You kind of have to wonder. I mean, he's, you know, he's racing Rolex. He's racing a number of ALMS events. He's racing Le Mans. Maybe he's going to NASCAR because he wants to race over 30 times a year. I mean, this kid just loves to get behind the wheel and does an incredible job. Coming up close, 3 minutes away from 3 hours remaining. 3 hours remaining in this 75th running of the Michelin 24 Hours of Le Mans. The Rolex clock tells the story. We'd like to say a big good morning to everybody on the East Coast. 6 a.m. there, 12 noon here, local time in Le Mans. And we hope you're enjoying the coverage. And if you're just joining us, we hope you enjoy it as we take you right through to the finish. And, of course, a big Father's Day hello, welcome, and happy wish to every father out there who's kicked back watching the race. And hope you're going to enjoy the rest of it. There is somebody we want to get right to down in pit lane who is with Chris Neville, the three-time and defending Vanderbilt Champ Car Cup champ. Chris?
Greg, a couple hours ago, we ran that feature where Calvin Fish spoke with Sebastien Bourdais about the Peugeot program, and you all had pretty realistic expectations. You really didn't know what was going to happen with the car after 12 hours, but right now, both cars on the podium overall, you've got to be pretty happy.
Yeah, but we're still a long way to go. It's still 3 hours, and I've seen very disappointing things here, like, you know, engines blown up 2 hours to the end and stuff like that. So Le Mans is never over until you see the checkered flag, and I learned that the hard way. So we'll keep our fingers crossed and hope for the best.
Well, that bad luck can also happen to Audi, and they've been having problems throughout the race with 2 of their cars. Now, if you guys were able to pull off the win here today, how would this place react?
I think it would go crazy. But, you know, Tim has been working really, really hard, and in 6 months' time, you know, of racetrack, it's unbelievable to see the progress they've made, both on the reliability and the speed. So, you know, it's still a long way to go until we get to Audi, you know, to beat them fair and square, but it's still pretty impressive if we can pull it off.
With as good as the cars have run here today, next year, is it only a win going to do?
It doesn't matter how fast you are at Le Mans sometimes. You know, you can see Dindo was, you know, flying, and the number 2 car was just, you know, on another planet, and still anything can happen, and they lost the race. So, yeah, you need to be fast, yeah, you need to be reliable, but you need a little bit of luck.
You know, we're starting to hear that there's potential for more rain here in these last couple hours. How do these cars work in the rain?
Wow, we seem to be really good both at the Thursday night session and in the warm-up. So we'll see what happens, but I'm fairly confident if I have to drive in the rain. It's just obviously it all depends when it happens, because you're going to be on slicks when this thing comes down, and it is going to come down between in about an hour from now. So it's always a little stressful.
Good luck in these last couple hours. I imagine this team is probably going to have to padlock these doors shut if they do come away with a win, probably even a podium, because we know these fans come down into pit lane so quickly, and they're just going to tear this place up.
Yeah, and, you know, you got to listen to him when it comes to a forecast, because this is home. You know, he's got some insight.
He certainly does, and he'd love to get on that podium, and he'd love to win, but he has a long way to go with the 8 machine, but certainly the 7 car, a couple of laps ahead of him, Dorsey, but right now it's in the hands of Biela, Pirro, and Werner, but that rain is the big curveball that's going to be thrown at these boys in the next hour or so.
It is, and Sebastien said it depends on where it hits and how it hits, because, you know, it's an 8-mile circuit. When the rain starts, wherever it might start, where you are in relation to that's going to dictate what happens. I mean, if it starts and you're real near pit lane, you come in, you get your range right away, you luck out. If you just pass pit lane, it starts pouring rain, you got 8 miles to go before you get your rubber. So
I think with a 6-lap margin, certainly they'll be very conservative in the Audi camp. I think if there's even a sprinkle, they'll probably bring him in, go to intermediates at least, Dorsey. So if there is any water on the racetrack, you have a chance of getting it back home safely if you're on the inters. Chris did a great discussion earlier in the show about the differences between the intermediates and the wets, and there's really a tremendous difference. The wets are much softer, so if you run on those on a drying racetrack, they overheat very, very quickly. The intermediate you can run on a dry racetrack for quite a bit, so if there's any sprinkles out there or any rain sort of like looming, I think they'll get Biela on some intermediates pretty quick.
And what we've seen in the last 4 days is when it rains extremely hard for a very short period of time. It just pours down rain for 5 minutes and then it tapers off. So you got to be on the full wets for just a short period of time. And then, of course, you have to make your decision. Taking a look at Ronnie Fellows, this could be the final time that Ron Fellows sits in this race car at the 24-hour Le Mans. He refuses to say this is his last one, but speculation has it. And the guy is just, he's solid gold. He's not out of this yet either. He can still win this race.
They're in this because this is the Aston Martin crunch time. I mean, last couple of years we've seen them lose the lead of this race right at this very point. After about 21 hours is when they've had problems before. Maybe the rain, however, really takes the load off the car, Dorsey. Maybe that will help out the Aston Martins this year. But right now, Johnny O'Connell and Jan Magnussen, they think about him being the magic potion. He's won 3 in a row with the 64 machine. He switched over with Johnny and Ron for this year because obviously he's running with Johnny full-time in the LMS series.
Yes, it was interesting. On my little break just then, I needed a good old English cup of tea. So where do you go else but Aston Martin? And while in there, David Richards was standing there with his wife Karen and Ulrich, who came in from Aston Martin, and the look on their faces was quite kind of transparent. It's like, you know, either here we go again or here we go for the first time. And also very, you know, sort of touchingly, all the wives and girlfriends of the drivers in the Aston, lead Aston, were sitting there glued to the screen. So I'd say there's a pretty high degree of tension in amongst Aston Martin, and equally so when I walked back past the Audi, as I went by the in the Audi guys, and they were saying to me, it's a bit like a you know, you've gone to Vegas and you haven't just betted on black, red, and the spread. You've actually now just got your money on one car, and they're all a little bit nervous about that too. So I tell you what, there's a long way to go, and everybody is ramped up and terrified, I think, inside about this rain.
Well, the leader is in, and this will be his 32nd stop. Remember, they've got 10% less fuel. They won the race last year with 27 pit stops. This will be their 32nd today, and we can expect a couple more before the checkered flag.
Yeah, and that's because of the rain. We know for sure that'll be part of it, but there'll be more than that.
And you also saw behind them, you saw Ron Fellows. We had seen him standing by. Well, we saw the number 63 Corvette peel in right behind the Audi, and there it is. It's in, and Chris Neville is there.
Well, we see Ron Fellows taking over for Johnny O'Connell, potentially. Dorsey, you said it, this is probably his last run at Le Mans. You got to think this is an emotional time for Ron, getting behind the wheel of that car at this historic race. Now, looking at the skies, this last run could probably be in the wet. Now, Ron being from Toronto, great rain driver, you know, he probably isn't too concerned about that, but well, it would sure be nice to finish this out in the dry or a nice sunny day. But Ron Fellows probably getting that last ride.
He'll have his emotions totally in check right now because he's totally focused on the job he's going to do. But let me tell you, at the end of the deal, when he knows he's stepping out, it's going to be tough.
That's when it's going to hit him, and it would be a perfect, magical story here today, Greg, if Ronnie Fellows could finish his career at Le Mans on the top step. He won it in 2001, 2002, but it's been a lean period for Ronnie at Le Mans. Plenty of podiums, but never got back on that top spot.
And if you're a real racer, the top spot's what it's all about, and you know that would be, in fact, this the Cinderella story, I think, of this year's Le Mans. Certainly for Ron Fellow fans, you know, I mean, obviously for the local fans, it would be the Peugeot story. And speaking of which, I got to say, listening to Sebastien Bourdais when he said, you know, there are many times disappointing things happen, you know, he's thinking, so we remain hopeful, you know?
Yes. Anything can happen. Meanwhile, the Aston Martin charge continues. Darren Turner, what a role he is on. This is the leader, and Darren Turner, he won a British touring car race recently. He won an American Le Mans Series race at Salt Lake City, but Justin Bella's down there with the Aston guys.
Darren just leapt out the car, and Ricard Radel has got in. And you know, you'd like to say it's standard this time of the race, but nothing is that much a function of routine. These guys are tired, very tired. You can see it on their faces, and they just spring into action as they change all the tires, get the car back on the ground and get it going. Oh, the car just stalled before it went out, but that's not a great big deal. This doesn't have a starter motor issue right now. You can see it, it's amazing. A testament truly to the professionalism, the dedication of the mechanics. You've seen shots of them almost sound asleep lying on loungers, and then within about 2 minutes they're on deck and you know, doing a professional job like they were in a Grand Prix. It's almost humbling to see them at work.
That's a very good way to put it. I mean, in any race, sprint or otherwise, the mechanics, the crews are the unsung heroes. but you get into these long endurance races, they are something else. And when Dorsey Schrader talked about Ron Fellows being gold, awful lot you can say about that, but I remember when he got offered a ride in a Ferrari 333, never been in one before at Mosport. Yes, he knows Mosport, didn't know the car, put it on pole. Ron Fellows is special, and if this is his last one, he'll be missed. The Michelin 24 Hours of Le Mans, watching, of course, the Peugeots here as the world feed, the host feed here from France. Very interested in the goings-on with Peugeot, but one of the great battles that's really out on the track, separated by a lap, give or take, is the battle for GT1 between the 009 Aston Martin and the 63 Corvette. And while we were in the break, Chris told us that the pace of the Aston Martin right now is a bit of a surprise to the Corvettes. Not that they're surprised they can run that fast, but why they're running that fast. And maybe Justin Bell can find us the answer.
Well, the man that put the thorn in the side of Corvette, I think, was Darren Turner here. You're running amazing pace in that last stint. Any particular reason, or just you're in the groove?
Well, the car's really hooked up right now. I mean, before the race, because we had so little running in the dry, all three of us, Rabham and Rydell, all of us were worried about the balance, and luckily the guys had done the homework before the race started, and the car's running really sweet all the way through.
So did you respond at all to Corvette's push a few hours ago?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, the guy said, you know, no risk, don't put the car in jeopardy at all. And, you know, the first stint of my last run, you know, I was trying to get the most out of the car. And then as I got towards the end of the stint, the guy said, looks like the Corvettes have sort of backed it off a little bit, so you can do the same. And we dropped back to like 3-minute 53s and 54s, and we've just been not cruising, but, you know, just playing it safe right now.
I mean, I remember when sometimes you get the call to back off, it's actually harder because the cars, they're worried about your time, but you're really in the flow of it and you're braking efficiently and everything like that. You can actually lose concentration when you have to back off.
I mean, it's definitely the case. When I went back out after the pit stop, the first 2 laps were really bad. And although they wanted 53s, they ended up getting 54s out of me because I was making mistakes. So then I just upped it a little bit where I got myself back into, you know, where my braking points were, and I just sort of eat a bit easier on the throttle on the way out the corners just to keep it around the 53s. But it is true what you say about the fact that you can make mistakes when you're just cruising.
And obviously cockpit temperatures, you mean, look, I'm not going to say fresh as a daisy because I don't think of you as a daisy, but I mean, it's obviously pretty tolerable.
Yeah, I mean, it's good that the ambient temperature today is quite low as well, but I mean, in the car it's not really that hot at all. I don't know what the cockpit temperature is, but it's you know, it's easy to do the work, and you know, I'm not even taking much fluid on during the stint. You know, maybe 500 millilitres of fluid during 2 hours, so that's not so bad.
For us American viewers, that's not a lot of fluid because we don't know millilitres. Anyway, listen, I'm a superstitious driver, so I'm not even going to say anything else to you.
Perfect.
Just see you in a few hours.
Okay.
Right, mate.
Is that equivalent to a rum and coke then?
One of yours, Dorsey. Intended for anyone else.
Good look on this. Good look here once again at our leader in the P1 category. Continues to be the Bill Binney Motorsports entry. Alan Timpany behind the wheel right now, and this car has quite a bit of room in hand. I mean, it's very comfortable out there at this stage, but as we have heard and seen and witnessed over the years, things can happen. Oh, and our GT2 leader is in, the number 76. Imsa Matmut Porsche is in pit lane, and it looks as though we've got a driver's change happening, and looks they're going to put Pat Long back behind the wheel.
Yep, he's already back behind the wheel. He wasn't wasting no time whatsoever. That's all planned, obviously. You could see the mechanic or one of the crew guys helped the driver out, kind of just picked him up and threw him to the side so Pat could get in there.
Well, you want someone with a lot of experience. We're expecting rain within the next 45 to 60 minutes, so you want the best guy in the car. No disrespect to the other 2 drivers, but Pat Long is definitely on top of his game. He's one of the Porsche factory drivers, the only U.S. factory driver for the Porsche team. So he's really in the groove this year. He's running different cars, different series. He's busy every week, it seems. Everywhere we go, he's there, and he's done other events aside of that. So this is the guy you want behind the wheel. He's won the race before, back in 2004 with the White Lightning team. He has the experience, and I think whatever the conditions, he will get the job done.
Well, I think that was a smart call right there. They didn't put tires on Cal. They left him out there. And the reason, of course, for that is that the impending rain. Why would you put him on tires right now if he has to come in half stint again?
Well, you want tire temperature as well. I mean, it could rain any moment. If you're on cold slicks, it's even worse than something that's got temperature already in there, and that's really kind of a tough zone to get in, Dorsey, when you go out on the racetrack with cold slick tires. If you can't generate the tire temperature because the track is slick, it really just compounds itself, no pun intended, with the tires.
Of course, this is a Luke Alphon bet. We're getting world feed again, and this is one of the old Team Corvette that Luke Alphon bought and has been running. It's down several laps, but yet still running well.
This team busy with a full-out European program, running the 2 Corvettes, the C6 and the C5 that they have, and looking, as I understand it, may see one of the current C6 Corvettes from Corvette Racing end up in the Luke Alphon camp for next year and campaigning 2 C6Rs. So at this stage, let's get right down to Justin with Jacques Villeneuve.
Jack, wonderful to see you. You obviously just got out of the car. Is it everything you expected and more?
It's tougher than I expected, mostly when the conditions are bad. When the sun is setting and you don't see a thing, it becomes a little bit critical. But at night it was great. This morning it was great. There's less traffic. There's a few cars that are not on the track now, and it makes life easier.
Now, psychologically, obviously, in the race you're in, we may have rain coming over the horizon. I mean, it's a tough call, right?
It's a tough call because anything can happen. When the rain drops, you could be driving slowly to be safe. If it just drops in the corner when you're there, there's nothing you can do.
At any time, maybe in the middle of the night when you're having to get out of the motorhome, did you question your decision to do this?
No, not at all. Definitely not. It's been a great experience, a great learning experience, and you need to do the whole race to actually learn the track properly to be ready for the following years if you're ever going to do it again.
Yeah. Well, we've loved having you here, so you know, good luck.
The 95 Indy 500 champion and kart champion, now Champ Car, of course, and 97 Formula One champion, and looking to emulate. We've talked about it before, but if you're just joining us, there's only been one person in the history of the Indy 500, the kart championship, the Formula One World Championship, and Le Mans to win them, and that obviously was Graham Hill, who won Indy in '66, won Le Mans, and also a 2-time Grand Prix champion. And Jacques Villeneuve could enter some fairly stratospheric
he certainly
levels here with a win here.
And this car is running very quick. Stefan Sarazan, I think, has been a star this week. We know he's very quick in anything he jumps in. Certainly put in some great performances over the years with the Aston Martin squad. He's a great rally driver. Very rare do you see that crossover. We talk about coming from single-seaters to sports car. Very rarely do you see a rally car star getting into a sports car. So Sebastien Bourdais now behind the wheel of the 8 machine.
And we've been talking about the weather. Chris, any updates from pit lane?
Well, you know me and my weather reports. Just checked back in with the Corvette weather station, and it looks like that rain is probably about 10 kilometers southwest of here. Pretty much that front is halfway in between here and Angers, which is, I think, about 40 miles away. So the way it's moving, guys, it's going to be raining here soon. I can't imagine why.
What time are you off, Chris? Because that's probably about when it hits, I'd imagine.
Cal, I was having a hard time hearing you.
What time are you off your stint here? I would imagine that will be when the rain hits, just as Brian comes back down the pit lane.
Yeah, I've got about another 35 minutes, so the rain has got to stay away at least that long.
Well, make sure it does, because I'm on the same schedule as you.
All right, well, as we approach 2.5 hours remaining, here is a look at the overall running order. Top 5 occupied by P1 cars, of course, and it's going to get interesting, especially if the rain hits, so don't go anywhere.
That is the little piece of plexiglass that they put down right in front of the driver. There are different heights of those based on how tall the driver is, and it deflects the wind coming at the helmet up and above it.
And that's amazing, Dorsey. If you're in a car and you've got the wrong one in, the buffeting on the helmet is unbelievable. It'll wear you out in the course of one stint.
It shakes your head left or right so violently that you can't really even see. And if you try to fight it with your neck muscles, then it won't be long before you just can't even hold your head up. And it doesn't take much. I mean, 1/16 of an inch sometimes between one driver and the other will make the difference. But if you have a roof on your head like this, you can have your visor open. You can be as comfortable as can be.
I'll never forget once, Dorsey, when I was running 100cc karts, we had this spin visor for the rain. Do you ever see one of those, like the propellers?
Yeah.
So I thought I had this secret when I had the super karts, which go about 140. So I stuck this thing on. I got down the straightaway and I was out of balance. And then it took my head off.
Oscar Kovaleski wore one of those on his Can-Am helmet.
Really?
Yeah. Had a little whoopie spinner.
I was so smug when I walked on the grid with that thing. After half a lap, I said, this was a mistake.
Trying to grab it, stop it, cut your finger.
That thing fly off and mow the lawn across the apex. Well, let's take a look at some of the developments that have occurred throughout the event here in LMP1. It has been really a fascinating story as things have changed and evolved and developed. So let's take a look at it. Of course, right at the start, from the outside, it was Sebastien Bourdais in the Peugeot, and he was going up against Dindo Capello in the Audi, and they got into the first couple of corners, and Bourdais just a little bit too quick in.
Yeah, a little bit wet, too, and he didn't know that yet.
Then the number 8 Peugeot, bit of a scare as smoke out of that right rear. Turned out to be wheel bearing upright related, about a 12-minute stop. And then really an amazing development here. The number 16 Pescarolo, Emmanuel Collard, had to go around some pretty serious contact, and yet that car continues to run in 4th overall. Then Mike Rockefeller, Calvin, huge hit.
Huge hit. The track had got damp and Mike just got caught out. That could have a major impact on this race. We've got to see if the other one get to the finish. Then the other Audi, Marco Werner, skied down the inside, touched Jan Magnussen, and this was the big moment, Dorsey.
Look at that, the wheel. They dropped the jack. The wheel wasn't all the way on. Did that cause this problem? Maybe. Dindo Capello going into Indianapolis curves. Huge shot right straight on. Luckily, they moved that wall way back and put that ditch in, but it took the steering out. There, Dr. Ulrich. You don't want to know what he's saying. You already know what he's saying.
At that point, and there's Dindo, and absolutely beside himself, just dejected. And after that, of course, it became the number 1 and assumed the lead. Marco Werner at the time. Now that car leads in the hands of Frank Biela. And the amazing story about that was that car, the number 2 car, at 262 laps when that happened, had led all but 3. It was dominant. It was gone. And then to have something like that happen is just amazing. Take a look at our Valvoline out of race update after 21 hours, and we're just going to flip through them here, but you can see a number of cars. Of course, this race, as does any long race, attrition, and it doesn't seem to play a whole lot of favorites here. It's every class has a number of cars dropped out. Now, here's the key. The record for finishers here is 30. 31 still running right now officially.
Yeah, well, we've got a long way to go. That rain hits, we could see that number come down considerably.
And we should qualify that because there's more starters this year than there has been as well. So that certainly plays into it.
Well, like Calvin said, with impending rain, anything could happen. I mean, it's an unpredictable situation with an 8-mile track where that rain will hit and where you are in retrospect. You know, if you come into a corner that was dry the lap before, it's completely besieged in water. You haven't seen that water yet. Well, you know, you can get caught off. We see it every time it rains here.
You just have to tiptoe around, but if you're on slicks, Dorsey, you can get one of those downpours. You almost can't go slow enough to keep the car on the racetrack. Remember at Sebring a few years ago when you and I were running GT1, we had that deluge and we ended up with a red flag. I mean, you couldn't keep up with the pace car, let alone anything else.
Actually, you know, the pace car driver was requesting us catch up and get out. I said, tell him to slow up. I mean, come on. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's not like a street car. If you drive a street car, you know, in the rain and deep puddles, you felt aquaplaning or hydroplaning at high speed. But these things will do it down there around 30 miles per hour.
We saw Jacques Villeneuve out there the other night in qualifying when the rain came down on slicks. And I mean, GT2 cars were going around him because they're a little bit more softer in the suspension setup and a bit more pliable to those type of conditions, and he just literally just inched it back to pit lane, just wanted to get the heck out of there.
Let me ask you guys a question here. I mean, the closest battle on the track right now is GT1, a lap between the 009 Aston Martin and the 63 Corvette. Either one of those better in the wet, where it would be a benefit relative to the other car?
The Corvette is very, very good. Talking to their drivers, they're very comfortable in the wet. They believe they've got their traction control really dialed in. The big thundering V8 is a little more docile. These V12s in the Aston are a bit more peaky, Dorsey, so I would think the advantage would be with the Corvette boys.
Well, I know for Johnny O'Connell anyway, he was saying he really loves this car in the rain. He wished it would rain. So I would think that's who will be in there. If it starts raining, they'll put Johnny in. And you're right, the traction control is such a huge factor as to how the car works. And Corvette has got the traction control working really well. That motor's got so much torque, it runs at a lower RPM. These V12s, they got to really spin it up, and they are peaky. They come up on their cam, and they want to give you 100 horsepower. You only need 10.
The 007 was, sorry, Calvin, the 007. And here's João Barbosa, who's in the Roll Center Racing Pescarolo Judd. And this is the car that currently sits 5th overall, 5th in P1. And they had a couple minor things early, and then this car has just been absolutely running flawlessly. And had they not had those problems early, may have been able to have played it up and had a run at the factory, if you will, Pescarolo Judd, in the hands of Romain Dumas, the number 16 car, currently 9 laps behind that one.
Well, this is the first Pescarolo chassis that has been sold to a customer, so it's the same as the Pescarolos, other than this year Henri came with a new aero setup, low downforce, less drag, and Martin Short discussed the other day the fact that he was offered that bodywork, and there we see the problem for a 55 car, one of the Salines.
Well, it looks like he's gone long, and I don't think he's made contact with the tire barrier. It looks like he just basically has spun the car around in the brake zone at the end of Porsche curves. I believe that's where we're looking at. There's a problem, however.
Oh, the number 59 Modena, Team Modena, Aston Martin right rear is completely deflated, and Justin, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of urgency here.
Catching the team unawares, they all were like, we could all see the flat tire, and they were like looking at each other going, why have you come in? That became apparent when they all went to the rear right, and they had no tires out of the warmers at the back, so they definitely were behind the ball there. But you know, well, that's what radios are for, I thought. But you know, it should be pretty standard. It doesn't look like it's ripped the bodywork at all. There's obviously enough clearance in there, but you know, those things can really torque around the nut when you're, you know, add a lot of stress to it. So who knows what it's gonna be like getting it off. It's created this little sort of alcove for the guy to go in with the gun, and they're just going to do this. You know, there's a routine to this. They're going to do their fuel. They're going to, even though they got a little bit of an issue, they're going to stick to their normal pit strategy.
He might have been lucky enough to get that flat, just maybe, you know, right down there before pit in, thusly getting to the pit before the radio signal. That'd be pretty quick, though.
Doesn't seem to be any damage
Absolutely.
to that.
If he was, you know, that's that call of like, oh, thank goodness. If you just turn into that first left just after pit lane entrance, and you're committed to an awfully long lap. It's not like you're at Lime Rock and you can go, okay, I'll make it round. But you know, some cars have failed just because the driver didn't react fast enough. But obviously not the case here. They're in the pits. They're going to have to push the car back, and it'll be back on the road. These guys have had their baptism by not fire, but by duct tape and problems like that. So they're in the pits, and
I'm glad you said by not fire, since you're right there.
I think there's a lack of intensity there, certainly. I mean, they're down a little bit in class, had some problems early on, so you know, everyone's tired. When you're in the game, Dorsey, it keeps everyone pumped up. When you're out of a podium position.
Hey, he's chasing a corner marker. What are you doing that for? Leave me alone.
Is that down at Mulsanne, Dorsey, or is that down at the chicane?
It's hard to say from that picture, but that corner worker wasn't too happy, was he? The course marshal getting chased over the barrier. Take a look at what happened. Oh, that just doesn't look right at all, Calvin. I don't know how to call that one.
I think that's down into Mulsanne, but he got it wrong, certainly on the brakes. The brakes are getting worn, and typically you're going to wear out the front brakes first, Dorsey, so maybe had a bit too much rear brake in the car, possibly.
It was funny. It twitched, and it seemed to have caught the twitch, and then when it looked like it was going to go the other way, I think he got on the throttle to try to spin it, but in any event, he knocked the whole tire barrier down.
It looked like something came off the bottom of the car.
Well, it could have.
Kicked back around, then he hit the barrier.
It was a very strange type of a spin, or semi-spin. He finished the spin with the throttle, but I mean, something was funny there about that.
You don't have to tell the corner worker that.
He didn't think it was funny at all.
He just go, yeah, you're on the throttle, pal.
He goes, why aren't you chasing me? I've done nothing to you.
Here he comes. Christian Fittipaldi took the Aston Martin back on track, and he is really one of the best wet weather drivers in the world, Christian Fittipaldi. So if we see some rain here, he's the man to have behind the wheel of that modern Aston Martin.
And while we were watching that pit stop for the Modena Aston Martin, we also saw the beautiful yellow Chamberlain Synergy. That's a Courage that has been in the thick of things and certainly had problems, but also been persevering mightily at this point. And I think Justin has caught up with team principal.
Perseverance is your middle name, Hugh.
One?
Perseverance is your middle name.
Yes, that's for sure.
You wear the battle scars of Le Mans like a familiar coat. Unfortunately, that's not your plan coming in, is it?
No, it wasn't the plan at all. It's just we've not really had a good time this week. We did a lot of it. All the preparation was right. All the practice was right. The testing and qualifying, it all went perfect. And then as soon as we started the race, I knew it was going to be bad when we got a puncture by the beginning of the Mulsanne on the first lap. And that wasn't a good start. And it went downhill from there. And the only thing it didn't do was pour with rain about 10 times. I expected a lot of rain. I think we're going to get a bit of rain before the end of the afternoon, or the end of the race now. But we had so many silly problems and big problems. But the lads have been quite remarkable all the time.
I mean, unfortunately for you, it's like a double-edged sword. Your cars always make it to the finish, but not like for the number of laps they've done. It's a real tortured kind of route. I mean, Le Mans is so hard. You can really respect it, like when a Christensen wins it or an Audi.
Yeah.
But they don't just do it on money alone, do they? I mean, there's a lot of talent.
The planning and talent that goes into this thing is extraordinary. And it's a fantastic achievement to get a car through to the end of the race. I mean, now if you look at it, at the moment there's roughly 2 Grand Prix distances to go, and we think it's nearly finished. And you think, well, it's an awful lot of running, enormous amount. And it wasn't so long ago there was a 1,000-kilometre race before the end, and we thought we were nearly there. It's a lot of work. It is a remarkable achievement. The number of people are still going. Great admiration. Well, I loathe them, of course, because they're half of them in front of me. But it's they're all some pretty good guys out there.
Well, the nice thing is, Hugh, it hasn't affected you physically.
No, my anorexia is distinctly better than it was before.
Perfect, just like the guys up in the booth.
Yes.
Awesome, Justin. And folks, you saw a little bit of a gift perhaps to the Audi in terms of pressure as the number 7 Peugeot wheeled into the garage, and that means it's going to be there at least for a while. And the third place car, the number 8 car, currently the better part of 7 laps adrift of Biela in the number 1 Audi. So break in terms of the pressure, but for the 7 car, there it is. You see them, they've got the bodywork up. They don't really like to show you much, do
There
they?
it is behind what they don't want you to see they're working on, which is something at the back of the car. Yeah, this is
Sebastien Bourdais called, I think, during the interview with Justin just a short while ago, I think it was, in terms of, he said anything can happen with a couple hours to go, and here we see 2 hours and 19 minutes left in this event, and the 7 car suddenly having its first drama of this whole event. It's run trouble-free till this point, but as Hugh Chamberlain said, it's like 2 Grand Prix distances to go. You can never count your chickens at this place.
The only thing we've seen with these Peugeots, it's both of them, not just the one, is that they collect the rubber. And then we did hear a driver talk about last night that the engine was in fact overheating when they brought the cars in to clean that rubber out of the radiators. So if it's been running in an overheated situation, I theorized right before sunup that it was going to get hotter as the day went on. This problem would become worse. Now we don't know if that's what that is in there or not, because they've got the big blinder up.
You see Marco Werner watching his man, Frank Biela, attempting to win another one for these boys. And Marco Werner, he's pretty much the quiet man of that group. This will be his 3rd consecutive. That's a remarkable run. We talk about Christensen, but Marco Werner has his own run going right now.
You know, get yourself in a position to win this race is one thing. To get yourself in a position to win it repetitively, or, you know, as many times as Christensen, is remarkable. I mean, in modern day era, it's just not going to happen. I mean, technically, you'd have to be with Audi for the last decade.
Well, that's the key, Dorsey. When you do have success, typically the big teams want you. And Christensen has certainly been in some remarkable equipment, but he really has the knack around this place. They're looking at some of the Peugeot management as they watch. Sebastien Bourdais now eating into the 2nd place lead of Manassian in the 7 car. He has 2 laps to make up before he will then assume the 2nd place position in the race with just over 2 hours to go.
And Biela had already started to ease off things. His last lap was about a 3-minute 40-second lap compared to Bourdais at a 3:32.7. But the amount of time that is remaining, you factor that in for the number of laps that's remaining, it's going to take a little bit more in terms of that misfortune Bourdais was talking about to befall the Audi, perhaps, for them to have a shout. But we have seen it before, late in the going, things can happen here. Going to take a look at some of the results here as we're approaching 2 hours, 15 minutes remaining here at Le Mans. Since the year 2000, Audi has amassed 6 wins in the 7 years. It hasn't mattered really the entrant, whether it's been Audi Sport, Team Yost, Champion Racing, the result has always been the same. Audi atop the box and in front of that massive crowd that celebrates when the race ends here at Le Mans. The trophy they have earned 6 times, and again, really the Bentley in 03. That car had some fairly significant Audi R8 components in it. It is remarkable what this team has achieved, what this manufacturer has achieved. It has truly been, thus far, Audi's decade at Le Mans.
It really has, and will they add to that remarkable record here today, Greg? Only time will tell, just over 2 hours. We do have an official statement from Audi on the issue with the number 2, and it states that the wheel nut was not loose due to a pit problem. What caused the rear wheel to leave the car can only be analyzed after the race when the Audi Sport technicians are able to examine the car. Dindo Capello was in the middle of his second stint and had already driven for 54 minutes on the same set of tires. So that's what we saw. He was on the second part of a double stint there, but I know that the car has been back to the paddock since. When I returned for this last stint in the booth, the car was back there, and Ralph Hüttner and the crew were looking at it very carefully, along with the engineer Howden Gaines. So maybe since this statement came out, they have a bit better idea on what caused the problem. Here we're looking at another replay. There you see the car has dropped down. The wheel was barely inside the wheel well, let alone on and tight. So some miscommunication going on there, which is very un-Audi-like, Dorsey. I mean, normally they are like clockwork, and this is the consequence once again.
This is a very, very high speed in Indianapolis. That wall's been moved back, thank heavens for Dindo, because that would have been a really bad situation. Not that it wasn't already. But that wheel looked like it went on good to me. I watched it really good that time. I mean, it did drop the car on it, but once they repositioned it, and I saw the nut go down, it looked like it was centered on its pegs.
Oh, it was tight, Dorsey. It ran 54 minutes, so I don't think it was loose. Otherwise, it would have come loose a lot sooner than that. I think the question is, was that spindle damaged when the car came down without the wheel being tight?
I don't think it was, but I mean, like you said, they're going to now look at things very closely. They'll analyze the wheel. They'll look at the spindle. They'll look at the nut itself. They'll look for metallurgy problems. They'll look for any traces of it being loose, and they'll come up with an analysis, and it won't happen again. I guarantee you that.
Right.
A look here at the, I believe that's the 006 Aston Martin from Larborough competition, and that car has just been parked. They're working at the back of that car. Wonder if it's a similar belt problem to what we saw earlier with the 007 and the alternator and the like. There is the Peugeot. Just a quick thing about Larborough. They have amassed a remarkable record also since 2000. Since the year 2000, they have won a major GT championship in every year. It's been FIA GT, it's been the French GT, it's been LMS, it's been FIA GT and GT1. It's just been amazing what this team has been able to put together, and obviously struggling just a little bit here. And by the way, we've got a estimate now from officially from the folks here at Le Mans. They say over 250,000 spectators were here on Saturday through the gates, so we anticipate most of them will probably be on the front straight, certainly if Peugeot wins. But we want to visit with the gentleman who's really been a great host to us, allows us to set the cameras up in the garage area, and that is Mr. Risi. And great to have you with us. And obviously some problems with the 97 car, but boy, the gents in the 99 are bringing it home for you.
Yes, indeed. We're very lucky to have our second car here, because that certainly has covered our back with the disappointment we've had with the 97 car.
Obviously, the 97 car, before those problems hit, it was awfully quick. It was dominant even at some point. Can you take any consolation from that you had the pace? Obviously, you didn't get the result with it that you wanted, but you certainly showed people that this Ferrari is a mighty quick piece.
Very much so. But we worked on the setup and the right things. We had a little issue in the beginning of the race where window frame kind of its rivets broke loose, especially with the fast straightaway here. But so we were losing a lot of speed on the straightaway. But then we changed the door. So out of a total 16 hours of racing at the beginning of the event, we were in the lead for a total of 14 hours. So that gives you an idea. With a 3-lap lead around Le Mans, 8.5 miles, that's quite impressive, because our competitors are also very competitive.
Well, Mr. Risi, this is Dorsey Schrader. Thank you for lunch the other day, by the way. You've been with Ferrari quite a long time, and this water pump issue is very unusual.
Well, it's really not just the water pump itself. I'm glad you brought that up, because, you know, when one talks about a water pump, you think that it's just something that can be fixed quite easily. But in fact, what happened was, after Jamie Mello hit the barrier with it, he damaged the radiator at the front, and it spilled the water out. So once those little seals in the water pump actually get basically toasted, you start losing water out. And it's not just a simple process where you can just go and change a water pump out on a racing engine, because there are tensioner belts and various things that you've got to have the right tension on. And that's not really something you want to take very lightly.
Giuseppe, this is Calvin. I know you're very proud to be representing Ferrari here on their 60th anniversary, but talk about the commitment that it takes to come to Le Mans when you're in the middle of a championship charge over in the American Le Mans Series.
Yes, hi, Calvin. It really is huge to come here, simply getting all the merchandise over here. We have 2 cars and 8 tons of equipment that we've got to get it here on a pretty short timing. We came straight from a race in Utah, and now we'll be going back. Everything's got to be pretty well packed and loaded by tomorrow afternoon at 4 o'clock, so we get everything back in the States and get the cars ready for Lime Rock. So it's a very, very tight schedule indeed. Yeah.
We're watching the leader of the race there, Frank Biela. Looks like he went through the first chicane there, Dorsey, so he must have overshot. Unfortunately, made the right choice.
Yeah, right as we picked him up, he was weaving right through the PlayStation 3. You see it right there. He went through the chicane. He bypassed the chicane. It's highly unusual.
Right. We have to wonder if there's a problem with the #1 machine.
All right, Mr. Risi, we want to thank you very much for stopping by. Obviously, this is a big story that might be building. Again, thank you, as Dorsey said, for the lunch earlier in the week, and thank you for allowing us to sort of base out of your garage. And we wish you and the number 99 the best of luck as the race unfolds.
It's been my pleasure indeed. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
We heard a report that was just told to us from the truck that was mentioned from the pits that this car was going to be pitting, and they may be doing some work on it. Nothing more than that, so we wonder, is that maybe brakes?
Well, he's got a problem. Look at here. I mean, he's not able to fend off anything. He's in full limp mode right now, headed back to the pits, and Chris Neville was down there waiting for him. Maybe Chris knows something.
Guys, we were waiting for that car to come in, and Frank went by. The team are pretty much expecting him all set up. They've got a new rear deck set up, a higher downforce rear deck, because they're anticipating the rain. They've also got rain tires set out.
It's pouring, Chris.
I'm going to check in with some of the officials over, or some of the team members over here, and see if I can find out anything more.
Chris, it's pouring rain. He's right now on the track in a downpour. I mean, he is in a complete downpour right now. We don't know exactly on the track where it is.
That's heading into Indy.
It is possible that we did have a sprinkle that caught Frank out heading into the first chicane, and maybe he's just being ultra conservative in getting this car back to the pit lane safely. Chris talked about the changes that can be made. They're pretty minimal. Essentially what they will do is change the rear deck of the car. There's an extra gurney along the rear trailing edge. They'll probably change the front nose as well. You'll see a nose come on that has more louvers. It's called the Sebring nose, and that adds downforce as well. So right now Frank Biela is pulling on all of his experience here to get a race car back under very tricky and wet conditions, as you see the brollies, the umbrellas go up in the crowd.
Chris?
Guys, just checked with Dr. Ulrich, and he said that everything is okay with the #1 car. I think what Frank was doing is he was just seeing some precipitation out on the racetrack before we were, so he's just being ultra conservative. The team is saying there's no problems with the car. It is raining in pit lane down here, so this team very much in front of everybody else on pit lane on what is going on with this weather. They pulled that rear deck out about 3 laps ago, that higher downforce rear deck, and then they had slicks out, and about 2 laps ago ago, they started pulling the reins out, so they know exactly what the weather is going to do here. And once Biela gets here, this team will go into action, and Marco Werner will get behind the wheel.
Yeah, just for a reference point, folks, 7 laps is the margin Biela has in front of Bourdais right now. We're getting a report, too. Justin has just told us that they anticipate the number 8 Peugeot to make a stop as well. And if it's raining, as we have seen it, you know, if one car is going to need rains, the other one certainly
I was going to say, you can anticipate the whole run field coming in with a rain like that on the back straightaway.
But for these guys, they have to be conservative. They have such a margin, as you just mentioned, Greg, in terms of the gap over second place. So we'll wait and see what they do here. But it's tough because one half of the racetrack is dry, the other half wet.
Well, Biela brings it to pit lane, and you know, guys, I was watching his times before he slowed down because of the rain. This team really on cruise control. He was doing some 339s, some 342s, and compared to the times that they were setting in the late, they were down in the 27s. So this team really taking it easy out on the racetrack. So I'm sure Frank just saw that precipitation, said, you know what, there is no reason to put this car off. I'm going to just cruise back to pit lane where the team has already got reins ready. They're going with full reins. They're not going to go with intermediates. They've got that rear deck, which is going to be higher downforce. Werner already getting behind the wheel. You can see the team here taking that lower downforce rear deck off, going with the higher downforce one right now. The reins are going on the car, so this team being as absolutely conservative as possible. You know, we've been talking for a while about all the records with Tom Christensen, but you look at a couple of the guys in this car, Biela and Pirro, if they win this race, they're going to be tied with Justin Bell's dad with 5 wins. So really, all the Audi drivers really putting their fingerprints on the record book here at Le Mans.
They really are, and one thing they didn't do there, Chris, was change the front nose. They've gone with the normal Le Mans configuration, which has minimal louvers there, so that's really for low drag and low downforce. So they're probably just wanting rear grip right now, Dorsey. It may change the balance a little bit.
Well, here comes the Peugeot in, too. We're going to have to watch this as it unfolds because it seems to only be raining right now in that back straightaway. The Peugeot with the windshield wiper on, headed for its pits, and there is a full treaded rain tire. Thank you, World Feed, for showing us that. That's what you put on if it's going to be a deluge.
In comes the Peugeot number 8. Absolutely, they were ready. There is no driver on standby. That was interesting with Audi that they were able to do a driver change. The Peugeot team were absolutely, you could see it in their eyes that maybe there was something wrong with the Audi, and then they realized that in fact they were going to join the same club as that car and need wets. One of the things I will say about putting on wet tires when only say 70% of the Le Mans track is actually wet is, and maybe that explains the Audi not putting the high downforce nose on, nor our Peugeot, is the fact that you're going to have to seek out the wet line on the pieces of the track that are not quite as wet, because you don't want to burn up your wet tires and have to come in yet again within a short period of time. So the wets are going to benefit them out the back, but they're going to be a real pain in the butt all the way through the front section. Peugeot pulls out. You know, this race is really on, and I'm not convinced that you're not going to see them come back in for yet another change at some point.
I think the key is the margin of lead that they have right now, Justin. I think if I'm the number 1 squad, Dorsey, I think if you have to come in every lap and change to the right tires, you're going to do it. You have a big enough margin that you can afford to spend a minute in pit lane every 10 minutes and make the right choice here, but make sure you don't get caught out with not enough grip and not enough grooves on that race car.
And you can see here, Calvin, coming off Tete Rouge, how wet it is. And, of course, that is the fastest corner. That is the corner that caught off young Mike Rockenfeller the other day when he rode off the number 3 Audi. They don't want to do that again, that's for sure.
Marco Werner coming into that first chicane. That's the area of the track that Frank Biela had that problem. In fact, no, he's down in Mulsanne. So he's got half a lap under his belt. He'll start to get into a rhythm, get a feeling for the grip. He's on the wet part of the racetrack right now as one of the Aston's pits, as well as the Corvette. So the battle in GT1 is on, Chris.
That's right, Calvin, and Ron Fellows bringing the 63 Corvette to pit lane. Now, this is the only team that I've seen so far going with the intermediate tire, and I'm not so sure that that is the right call, because I can see down pit lane towards the trees, and it looks like there's sheets of water out there. So I think probably going with the full rain tire, looking up and down pit lane, it looks like that's what everybody else is doing. Obviously, this team trying to be a little bit more aggressive, trying to make up some time on those Astons, but if we get the sheets of rain that we've had over the past few days, the intermediates are not the
Change
tire.
their
Oh,
mind.
nope, they're changing their mind. They're going with the full wet. So obviously they saw something on the racetrack that they wanted to change, and they're going to go with those full wet tires, just like
Someone
everybody
probably
else.
told them that I'm supposed to be on brake right now, so to get the real heavy rain tires out.
No, I think that was a smart call. You were calling it, Chris, and then the team made the same decision. You don't want to get caught out here. Yes, going to the intermediates would have made this car much faster than a car on full wets through the dry half of the circuit, but you can't afford to get caught out, excuse me.
And as that car heads out onto the track and the rain picks up, that was a wise decision to hold it a little bit longer, go to the rains, and we have also just passed into the sub 2-hour category here at the 75th running of the Michelin 24 Hours of Le Mans. 1 hour, 58 minutes, and 40 seconds remaining. And as Dorsey said, pretty much the entire field is just streaming into the pits, making the tire changes, the driver change if necessary, and heading back out once again.
Now, for the past 4 days, at least, that we've been here, it has been this wicked little circle of activity where it pours down rain like it's doing. It lasts about 5 or 6 or 8 minutes, and then it stops. And then it waits for about a half hour, then it does it again. Every time I go to break or have to do something, it does what it's doing right now.
You take this so personally, Doris.
Well, you know, it's just one of life's things. That
Look how much Marco Werner is slowing down. They're going through that curve. Very high-speed portion of the racetrack, and he is just going to tiptoe around here. Do not make a mistake, Marco. There is huge pressure on this man. The whole weight of Audi is on the shoulders of Marco Werner right now.
I said earlier, Marco seems to be the driver out of all of the Audi drivers that we've seen who is more comfortable letting the car go, throw it around just a little bit, and maybe because of that car control, they thought he'd be the guy to have in the wet. Ooh, there it is. Got caught up behind the Akot-driven Ferrari. A little bit of a moment, but Marco Werner, as you see, there it is from the world feed. There are your rankings, top 10 in the LMP1. So it is Werner who finds himself, as you said, Calvin, you know, but they say the great athletes, you know, they want the ball, and I'm sure, you know, Werner went, that's fine, let me bring it home.
Well, he has the experience now so often in the Audi camp. They've looked to Tom Christensen to bring it home. I remember when the champion team won here in 05, Marco Werner got out of the car. He looked relieved, yet Tom Christensen had that glint in his eye, Dorsey, the eye of the tiger. He wanted the ball. He wanted to roll with it. He wanted another victory.
Absolutely. You know, you've got guys that like rain driving, guys that don't like rain driving. I hated rain driving. I happen to be pretty good at it, however. You know, I had good statistics in the rain. It's just miserable to have to do.
Well, you know, we've been talking about strategy. How do you play your cards, especially with one of the Peugeots having the big problem? The man who would know is with Chris.
Well, guys, we've talked to the guys who make the strategy calls at GM, and Dr. Ulrich makes all the strategy calls at Audi. What do you tell Marco Werner right now with the amount of rain coming down on the racetrack?
Be careful. No, we have put him some rear air on the car. This is why we changed the bonnet and wet tires. So that's the best he can get, and he just shouldn't take any risks. That's it.
It seemed that Peugeot coming into this race were being very conservative about what they thought their result was going to be. Did you anticipate such a strong fight from them?
Yes, I did. I did, really.
And that's probably why they showed up with 3 cars. These guys came here to win this race, and right now they're in that position, guys.
They certainly are, and a big help for Marco Werner right now, Dorsey, is that he does have traction control this year. When they came here last year, they didn't have it. They worked on it throughout the year. They were concerned about the durability of the car. When you have traction control, it really interrupts the drivetrain, Dorsey, and can maybe shock something. They feel they're now comfortable with that. That will be helping out that driver right now.
Well, we talk about strategy and how good Audi is at it. Let's put it this way. As Chris said, they showed up with 3 cars. If they showed up with 2, they wouldn't be winning this or in a position to do just that.
Quick reminder to you all that Thursday means payback, and it has a whole new season of custom rides and superstars, because when you make it to the top, you've got to say thank you in a big way. It's payback Thursday at 9 Eastern, only here on Speed. Hi everyone, Leigh Diffey back with you along with Calvin Fish. Big thanks to Greg Creamer for an excellent job. Dorsey has ducked out for a late lunch, and we've got Brian Till, Andrew Marriott working pit lane with thanks to Chris Neville and Justin Bell as well as the rain continues to fall. Check this out, Cal. Alan Simonson.
Wow, he just gets it all wrong coming down in that chicane and just not enough grip to make that tight chicane through the tyre barriers. And look at that for a picture. Major damage to the front spoiler on that Porsche, and these boys are running third in class, so hopefully there's not too much damage that the team has to fix and keep this car on track. A great run in this 24-hour race, but as everyone keeps saying, there's a long way to go. An hour and 50, Lee, and anything can happen, as we just saw.
Lars-Erik Nielsen and Pierre Eret would be saying, oh no, not so close to the end. They'll get to the pit box, they'll assess the damage and take it from there, as we show you the top three in each class respectively as the countdown continues. So the P1 and GT1 classes there for you. That gives you a good snapshot. Andrew, hi, what have you got for us?
Lee, I've just been looking in the Peugeot garage, and it's got barred to us at the moment. There's about 7 or 8 people still working on that motor, and I just saw a guy from Bosch who was sort of on a cell phone to somebody and looking into the engine as well. I'm not sure if he's talking to his wife or whether he was back to the people in Germany, but it's obviously a major catastrophe in the engine department. Of course, that car is now starting to slip down the order. And, well, we might still have a Pescarolo in the top 3.
Certainly looks that way right now. The 16 machine has assumed third position in this race, just 4 laps behind Bourdais and the number 8 Peugeot. So anything can happen here. Henri, get ready.
Well, he's got one Peugeot out of the way. Can he catch the other one? There's a 4-lap deficit from Sebastien Bourdais to Emmanuel Collard. Both drivers, of course, obviously Collard is still with Pescarolo now. Sebastien has driven for Henri in the past. But can either of them catch the Audi? Will someone make a mistake in this final hour and 3/4 in these treacherous conditions? Can't believe it's returned, Cal. I can't believe they've had to endure this again.
Well, this is what we expected with these conditions, Lee, for the entire event. We've had it non-stop for about 4 days, and come race time, it was really the brightest weather we've had here in Le Mans since we came over to France, and everyone expected the rain to hit sooner, but these conditions that the drivers are enduring right now is what they expected for the majority of the 24-hour race. So they got a little bit lucky, but right now the pressure is on. The key is just to be super smooth. I mean, you're pushing, obviously. Sebastien Bourdais realizes he's just 1 spot away from getting his first Le Mans victory, and how special would that be? But right now, you just got to be super smooth. He's got the sticky tires on. They're the softest compound, I'm sure. He's got the deep grooves, but he's just got to analyze the racetrack, look for those puddles, not make any mistakes. He realizes that he's not going to catch that number 1 Audi on pace, so he doesn't want to throw away this 2nd place. He just wants to keep it going, keeping it smooth, but keep the pressure on.
Alan Timpany has just been pushed into the garage in the Binny Motorsports Zytec. That is not good news. This has been a really encouraging run. That car has been in the top 15 for the majority of the race. It's been a mighty effort for many, many hours, more than half the race. It's been the only LMP2 class car on the front page of our leaderboard here on our computer screen. It's been an excellent effort from this team, owned and run by Bill Binney. What is the story down there?
Well, they have about a 20-lap lead over the 2nd place, but the key here at Le Mans, you have to finish that last lap. When you see the checker flag, you have to be out there to get classified, so that's going to be the key for that team. They have a big buffer in terms of the margin over 2nd place, but they certainly need to get that car mobile again so they can actually drag it back out. Even if it's for the last 5 minutes, they have a big lead. They've got to get that car functional.
Remember, we said LMP2 is a class of last man standing. Who wants to win it? There are only 2 LMP2 cars left running, and one of them is in the garage at the moment. This is Collard. This is inside Camp Binney. Brian, what you got?
Well, Cal, you were right. 22 laps in hand in the lead. So what they're doing, I talked to the crew chief. He said, we're waterproofing things. We're just going to make sure that we don't have any leaks, any shorts, or any problems like that. They're going to take this lead. They're going to do with it what they can, get this car ready to run in the rain. But the thing that's important is they can't spend a lot of time in here and just kind of lollygag around and then have a problem on the racetrack and throw it all away. So they need to get this stuff done, get it taken care of, and get the car back out there. And quite frankly, it's surprising that it wasn't done already, considering the fact that we've had so much rain over the past week.
I don't think this is a bad decision, Lee. If you think about it, they have such a huge lead. If we think about the leaders possibly running around the 4-minute mark, every hour they're going to do about 15 laps. So we've got an hour and 45. So if you do the math there, we may be looking at about 25 to 30 laps left in this race. They have a 20-lap lead. So they could sit that car in there, wait for these conditions to improve, make sure that the driver doesn't fall off the road. I think this is a smart move.
Very successful businessman there, centre of your screen, Alan Timpany. He's one of the UK's most wealthiest men. Bill Binney just surveying the scene. Brian, you can't entice him to talk to you, can you? He's been evasive.
There you go.
He's been very evasive. Did he at least say it with a smile on his face?
Yes.
Chris tried to do an interview with this group a little bit earlier, and they said, Superstition, we don't want to talk this one out any further. We're just going to keep doing the job that we've got going here. And a tremendous job. I mean, if you think about Bill Binney winning this class a few years ago and coming back with a second-place finish last year and on the verge of another one.
So Timpany's hopping out. Whether this is going to be a driver change or not, we'll wait and see. Perhaps they're just deciding to take a little bit extra time to get that job done thoroughly. So a little rest for Alan Timpany for the time being. They've got time, they've got laps on their side. What an effort it's been. From the car that proudly displays both the Scottish and American flags. That's how it stands in Prototype 1 class at the moment as far as the manufacturers are concerned. Audi over Peugeot over Pescarolo, and then the second Peugeot back in fourth. And then the 18 Pescarolo is Martin Short's Roll Centre Racing as the Binney Motorsport. Zytek is back on pit road, ready to go. Some additional tape to assist with any leakage or just to kind of waterproof it a little more. And just about ready to be sent. While they prepare to do that, let's show you just some highlights in case you've just tuned in of the GT1 class. Some of the highlights or lowlights in the case of Ollie Gavin within the first hour and a half. A drive shaft problem. And how about this, Marco Werner and Jan Magnussen? That was a close call for both cars. That could have been disastrous for both Audi Sport North America and Corvette Racing. And Tomas Enge, a little overzealous here. Spins the car. There was damage done to the undercarriage of the car and some aero parts as well. But the Aston that they have been chasing for the majority of the day is the 009 of David Brabham, Darren Turner and Rickard Rydell. To this point, it is still the GT1 class leading car. Brian.
Marco Werner sitting behind the wheel of his Audi R10 here in pit lane. New rain tires. Now, they say these rain tires can go 5 to 6 times longer than slicks. I don't think the Audi team is going to take any chances. It was a long, fast racetrack, even in the rain, and these rains so soft, easy that they can be worn out. So Werner, new set of rains, tanking diesel fuel, and he is back underway. The pressure of this victory squarely on his shoulders.
Cal, if you were to quantify in terms of a percentage, how much more do these guys need to step it up in terms of concentration as a driver? I mean, take yourself back to your days. Do you step it up another 25% because you have to concentrate more in these conditions?
Well, certain parts of the racetrack, Lee, I mean, you are just so tense. You're white-knuckling. Your eyeballs are just wide open. You're looking for that puddle if you have to go around slower traffic. I mean, the guy said in the nighttime when it was wet just like this in qualifying on Wednesday and Thursday evening, they said they've never experienced anything like it. So right now, the concentration level is probably double. I mean, driving a car like the Audi, when it's performing, some of these corners are relatively easy. But even the straightaways right now will be a concern. Dindo Capello said in the press conference that during the wet qualifying session, he couldn't even be flat out down the straightaway. So that gives you an indication of how tricky these conditions are.
And the rain continues to fall. Let's get it to Andrew. What you got, mate?
Leigh, the number 7 Peugeot is back on track. There was definitely some electrical-related problem. I saw people with voltmeters in the car. I saw a new ECU going into the car. But when they pulled it out and fired it up, it stalled twice before it went, and Marc Gene, who's now in his civvies, came out and walked up the pit road and looked to see if it had actually got out of the pit lane. I just wonder they put it into some sort of touring mode just to try and get it to the finish now. Going to try and grab an interview here. It's all been a bit hectic, as you can probably gather. But I think they're just in some safety mode to try and get it home now.
You can see there, though, Leigh, even down the straightaway, as that car was accelerating, you could see it weaving around, just aquaplaning, get on top of that deep water, and there's nothing you can do until you get a footprint on that tire once again. And that's the position where you need to have the car straight away. I spoke to Alan McNish about that. He said it is so tricky. It's almost like driving a rally car coming over a jump. You got to get the car straight. When it starts to get up on top of the water, you want the car pointing straight ahead. If it comes down at an angle, it's just going to take you off at that same angle to the racetrack.
Calvin, I think the best description of this racetrack in the rain is listening to some of the world's best race car drivers say it was frightening. And that's not a term that these guys use loosely, and it's not one that you hear very often. But when you hear guys like McNish, Christensen, Capello, guys like that, even guys throughout the GT class that are world-class drivers say it was frightening, you know just how bad the conditions are.
Again, this is Luc Alphon in his own car. His own team is beached. He is stuck.
This could be good news for Marco Werner, the leader. However, we see a safety car out there will slow the whole field. He'll be able to just cruise for a few laps here, and here we see him coming down through those Dunlop curves and just gets it all wrong under braking, and that's how easy it is to go around. Mistakes will be plentiful in these conditions.
Back to Peugeot.
Mark, can you tell us the problem? Was it electrical related?
Well, it's related to the engine, so it's really a shame, you know, after 22 hours. But well, I guess you can only say that racing, that's the way it is, you know.
Yes, when the car went out, I just saw the expression on your face. You're devastated about this because you had such a fantastic run going.
Yeah, I think if we would have managed the second and third place, would have been really a good start for Peugeot. Still, second and fourth is good, but of course it's better to be second than to be fourth.
You'll take a lot of memories away from this Le Mans, I'm sure.
Yeah, for me it's an experience. I really didn't know the race so much, and I learned a lot. So next year, if I come back, I hope I do, I'll be a lot more prepared. So anyway, for me it was a very good training, but of course on my first race to finish second would have been really good.
Thanks very much, Mark.
Ex-Formula One driver Marc Gene. We ride with Sebastien Bourdais.
Maybe this man will be in Formula One one day. We know it's his dream, and he thought that time had passed him by on that one, Leigh, but just recently he's got some Formula One testing under his belt. Been very impressive indeed. And the question mark is, will he be with that Toro Rosso team next year in Formula One? He's done such a great job in Champ Car. Just scored Newman Haas's 100th victory. How special would that be for not only Sebastian, but all of the boys there? Congratulations. Been on top of the charts for many years.
He is right at home in that Champ Car, isn't he? Just like he is in this Peugeot 908. 346 laps completed so far. That margin between he and Werner maintains itself, and it's just a little too much at the moment, but who knows what will unfold in the next hour and a half.
Give you an indication of the pace that Bourdais is running. He just ran a 4:29. Werner much slower, but obviously he had his pit stop, but he is some 20 seconds clear of Collard, who's out there in the Pescarolo. So Bourdais was very comfortable in the wet conditions the other night. We'll have to see once Werner gets up to speed what sort of lap times he can turn in similar conditions.
The 007 is in. Peter Cox is still behind the wheel. This car is 10th outright. It's 4th in class. This is Aston, Corvette, Aston, Aston. That's how they sit. The best of the Salines is 11th overall, with Jean-Philippe Belloc behind the wheel, and is one position behind that Aston we were just looking at. The one thing that you don't see on television, Cal, and we know from when we did that lap around a few years ago in that Michelin Carrera Cup car, is the enormous crown in the road. It's like when you go water skiing, per se, the wake, to go from one side of the wake to the other, isn't it?
That's right. As he was crossing that dashed white line down the center of the Mulsanne, you're going to feel it as you go across, and the grip level will change as you're going up over the hump. It'll pick up grip and then lose over the other side, kind of going from a bank corner to an off-camber turn, effectively, as you turn across the Mulsanne. But one of the Astons is in. That's the lead car. Let's get down to Brian.
David Brabham sits behind the wheel. It'll be fuel and 4 new Michelin rain tires. It's amazing how much temperature these rain tires have in them. When they come off, they're drying as they set them down on the tarmac, and it's still 65 degrees or so. So these tires are really getting warm out there on this Le Mans circuit, even with the slower pace. Brabham back underway.
Has never experienced victory here at Le Mans. He's had podiums twice. But what would it be like to stand on the top step of the podium? He almost won, and there was a rule infraction way back, I think that was 93, when he was teamed with David Coulthard. So he had one snatched away from him. But today it could be his in 90 minutes' time.
The number 7 Peugeot has come back down the pit lane with Nicolas Manassian and has been pushed back in the garage. Whatever that problem is, it is unresolved at this time.
And the Pescarolo boys watch on with much interest as that just solidifies Emmanuel Collard's place in 3rd, and they seem to be consoling Manassian like that's the end of the road.
I believe so, Lee. I mean, you don't give a little pat on the back like that. I mean, they've come a long way in a short period of time, but right now it looks like congratulations all the way around for a great job, but they will not see the checkered flag, it doesn't look like, with the 7 machine. But Bourdais is still out there. He is still very much in this race. And there you see him at work.
And in just 7 laps' time, that will elevate Joao Barbosa and the Roll Centre Pescarolo to a top 4 position. It could be their best ever finish at Le Mans.